how would you define these in your words, the difference between being a creative leader versus reactive?
So this concept is based on Keegan's adult development model.
Mm,
And one of the things that the psychology world has done, which I think is beautiful, is they've taken Keegan's adult development stage and they have laid leadership on top of it. And so the reactive stage is where, again, most of us are in. It's, something happens, we respond, and it's very fear driven typically. So driven from, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to be looked bad, or, critical, those types of things. And then when you can self-author more often, you start to move what's called a more creative state. And then there's like this like top states, like 1% of people get there. I think it's like the Dalai Lama. I think it's just him. I don't know who else would be there, but this like really amazing state. I wish I could move towards it, but it's this idea of we are evolutionally growing. Like we evolve as humans, but you get to a point where you have to really work on that evolution. You have to put in that work to make that happen and move to that more creative state. So that's I guess, the baseline of the concept and the idea.
okay. And I think there's some obvious examples as to why this would be so important, but maybe could you just maybe start off with the broad obvious ideas and then maybe move into a little more subtle, like why is it so important to make this continual evolution, moving away from reactivity and towards this creative capacity?
Yeah. So one of the ways that we set in reactive is a lot of times is we're very compliant. And so inside of that is belonging. And that's not belonging as an inclusiveness. It's belonging as I'm changing myself. So I look, sound, and feel like everybody else in the room.
Mm,
So then you lose your own perspective. And so you're not bringing your own perspective to any situation. When you're highly compliant, you're also very passive. You'll be like, oh, you want to do that? And in your mind, you're like, that is a bad idea, but I am not going to rock the boat. I do not want to upset my boss. So I'm just going to do what you tell me, even though I know that's driving us off the cliff. But that's what you want to do, then I am here for the ride. And a lot of people pleasing, like making sure everyone's okay, helping others to your own expense. And so that's just like one category of reactive, is that complying. But what happens is if we comply, we're not having the important conversations. We're not talking about other perspectives. We're burning ourselves out because we're, overly pleasing people. And we're, also getting up every day and trying to be someone we're not because we have to fit
mm,
in. So we waste all this energy. And it's really, especially when you think of complying, it is very difficult on the business. They've done research on which reactive tendencies, how much it takes away from the business. And then when you look at creative competencies, how much it actually adds to the business.
mm,
And so, though complying, you build relationships, you get rewarded because you're easy to work with. And that's one of the things that's interesting too about being reactive is we are highly rewarded for it. And so it's very easy to stay there.
mm.
You're so easy to work with. Thank you for taking on that extra work. I know it was a long weekend, but you really pulled it through. Like all of those things reinforce us unconsciously to stay in this reactive state.
Mm.
And so that's kind of an example of how it can be really difficult to the business, which is funny because also we say we love it. So we love that you're easy to work with, but then we're upset when, we drive off the cliff and we're like, well, if you knew, why didn't you tell me? Well, I didn't want to upset you. And this is, not a great part of it, like not a great example, but a great example. Many years ago when the Challenger exploded and, unfortunately killed the astronauts, when they went back to do the research, there was a young scientist in the room, mathematician, and she knew it was going to do that, but she was scared to speak up.
Oh, wow.
And that's complying in the workplace. Now, let's pray that it's never that, life or death, but that is a very clear example of how when you overly comply, you can do a lot of damage to the business, and why
Mm.
we want to embrace people being unique and having a voice and saying no when everyone else wants to say yes, because it helps drive the thought and make a better decision.